you, Dr. Jacob Teitelbaum. Dr. Teitelbaum is a board-certified internist, and he's also the medical director of the National Fibromyalgia and Fatigue Centers. He is the lead author of groundbreaking research on effective treatment for chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, and I have been privileged enough to have read that research and have found that he has absolutely amazing results by combining many, many integrative techniques in order to give people their lives back. He is the author of the best-selling book, Fatigue to Fantastic. His latest book is Beat Sugar Addiction Now. Additionally, he's been featured in many publications, radio and television events, and we are just so happy to have such an esteemed integrative medical practitioner as Dr. Teitelbaum available to us today to share this information. Thank you so much, Dr. Teitelbaum, and welcome.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. And the main thing Cheryl didn't say is I'm well known for having my cats let me live at my house graciously. So I want to welcome everybody here today. Today we're going to teach you how to step away from that cupcake, but we're also going to teach you how to have your cake and eat it too. So for those of you out there who are sugar addicts, and if you're wondering, by the time you're asking the question, the answer is yes, you are. And by the time you come to talk like this, you probably are. So it's okay to raise your hand and go, oh, hi, I'm Jacob, I'm a sugar addict, and you can all do that. But we're going to teach you today how to get rid of sugar addiction, but still keep the pleasure in life. So let's take a look at the problem. And the scope of the problem is major. We are a nation of sugar addicts. We are looking at the average American, getting 140 to 150 pounds of sugar per person per year added to our diet and food processing. That's sugar that you never even have a say in unless you start to read ingredients. And that means 18% of our calories come from sugar, another 18% from white flour. And when you add in the added fat, that means that about half of our calories are what are called empty calories. They have put on weight, but they have virtually very little in the way of vitamins, minerals, and other essential nutrients. So basically, when you're getting that much sugar, it acts like a drug. In fact, the head of the U.S. American Institute on Drug Abuse has noted that sugar and similar foods do act very much simply like an addiction, like a drug. So we're going to teach you how to come off that. We're also going to teach you how to get off of the sugar roller coaster. So for those of you whose emotions run from hot to cold to volcanic to frigid, all back and forth in the space of about 22 seconds, you're probably riding what we call the sugar roller coaster emotionally, driving highs and lows and just making life pretty crazy. So we're going to teach you how to keep the highs, but to smooth it out and to feel emotionally more healthy by controlling sugar as well. So let's start with, why is sugar an issue? What are some of the problems? Well, when people get the excess sugar in the American diet, we see fatigue and pain. We also see a host of other issues. Some of them many of you are familiar with, like chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, chronic sinusitis, irritable bowel syndrome and spastic colon, candida would be a biggie, and then even other childhood and adult disorders like ADHD, autism is aggravated by sugar, anxiety and depression. And in fact, let me make a brief note on autism. Those of you who know me know that I don't take money from any companies, including our gracious hosts, your Pharma here and others, and my royalties and for what I do go to charity. One of the things that our foundation funded was a study using NAET, a special acupressure type technique, in the treatment of autism. That study was published a few weeks ago. 23 of the 30 children in the autistic group who were treated were back in regular school after 1 year, as opposed to 0 out of 30. One of the treatments is treating the allergy and sensitivity to sugar. So for those of you who have a family member or friend with autism, be aware that that study and new treatment exists as well. Those of you with anxiety and depression, you'll find that a lot of that is driven by sugar problems as well. Now, those are just some of the things that make you miserable day to day, but sugar can also kill you. It's the major cause of diabetes. It's a aggravates risk for cancer, major cause for metabolic syndrome, which is a major cause of death in the United States. Metabolic syndrome is the main cause of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart attacks, and often diabetes. So heart disease, hormonal problems, we could spend the whole hour just talking about problems that are caused by sugar. Now, the thing is, I know personally I have a sweet tooth, and I like my sweet tooth. It's not something that I want to get rid of. I just want to get rid of the toxicity that's associated with it. So the question is, can you have your cake and eat it too? And the answer is yes, you can. Teitelbaum's rule number 1 of taking care of patients: never take away something pleasurable from a person's diet without substituting something equally pleasurable. Because you go to doctor to doctor and they say, cut this out, don't do that, you can't have this. And by the time you're done with all that, there's nothing you can enjoy. And if you can live to be 120 years old by cutting out everything in life you enjoy, why bother? So our goal here is to have you keep your pleasure, but to do it in a way that's going to leave you feeling great and healthy. So step 1, for me to just say stop sugar is basically just like laying a trip on you. It's like saying to an addict, stop the heroin. It's just not going to happen unless I teach you how to get rid of the causes of your sugar cravings, which is what we're going to do today. There are 4 main types of things that cause sugar cravings, and if you don't eliminate those, the person's not going to stop sugar. And all you do is set them up for failure, shame, guilt. But by eliminating the causes of the sugar addiction and figuring out what type you have, the sugar cravings go way down and it becomes much easier to get off of the sugar roller coaster. So there are simple quizzes which will tell you which of 4 types of sugar addiction you have, and by determining the type of sugar addiction you have, the underlying cravings can go away, and that's what makes all the difference. So let's take a look. There's 4 types of sugar addiction. Let's take a look at type number 1. Type 1 is what I call folks that are hooked on energy loan shark drinks. You're chronically exhausted and you're hooked on quick hits of caffeine and sugar just to get an energy boost during the day. And let's take a look at the quiz. So take a piece of paper and a pen and just check your totals here. Do you feel tired a lot of the time? Give yourself 20 points. Do you need coffee to get jump started in the morning? Give yourself 10 points. What's the average number of ounces of caffeinated coffee or soda or energy drinks that you do a day? Give yourself 2 points for each ounce. And then do you crave sugar or caffeine repeatedly during the day to get enough energy? Give yourself 25 points. And are you losing weight? Or, do you have trouble losing weight? Have you gained a lot of weight? Add 1 point for every 2 pounds of weight you've gained over the past 2 years. Now go ahead, write each of those down. Put together your total. Now, if you score under 30, no problem. You're not a type 1 sugar addict. If you score between 31 and 50, you're a type 1. And my book, Beat Sugar Addiction Now, in Chapter 6, there will be information on going ahead and treating that, and we'll talk about that today as well. If it's over 50, you are a sugar and caffeine junkie, and you got to learn to cut back on those so you can get your life back. Again, Chapter 6 in Beat Sugar Addiction Now is a simple way to learn how to get your energy. To put it in simple brief, though, if you have a type 1, you want to treat it with the SHINE protocol, S-H-I-N-E. This is similar to what we use for chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia because SHINE optimizes energy. So if you're hooked on energy loan shark drinks, you want to make healthy energy. You want to start with sleep. And there's very nice herbals for sleep. The smell of lavender will help you sleep, some magnesium at bedtime. All kinds of things you can do naturally to have you sleeping like a puppy. My favorite is a mix of 6 herbs, the passion flower, valerian, wild lettuce, Jamaican dogwood, hops, and theanine. These can be found in combination. For those that are walking wounded, if you just then get nutritional support with a good vitamin powder and some iodine, they have iodines that contain all 3 forms of iodine at 6¼ to 12½ milligrams a day. Worth trying for a month just to see. You may find that your energy picks right up. And then exercise as able. For those of you with CFS and fibromyalgia, that may mean taking 10 steps a day and then slowly working up. For others, it means getting a pedometer and aiming for that 10,000 steps a day over time. For those with severe fatigue, such as chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia, we add hormonal support and treating infections. So you need to treat thyroid and adrenal, sometimes estrogen, testosterone, and especially other infections. And we'll talk about some of those as we go along. Now, let's take a look at the N in SHINE, because for most people, getting good nutritional support can make a big difference. Because when your energy increases, you're not going to need the sugar or the caffeine for the energy boost. So again, improve nutrition, sleep, and exercise. And instead of your energy loan shark drinks that people are drinking out there, and that includes things like sodas, there's a vitamin powder called the Energy Revitalization System Vitamin Powder by Enzymatic Therapy, where one simple drink replaces over 35 tablets of supplements. This can be found at vitality101.com and in most health food stores. In addition, we've done 2 studies now in the most exhausted and the most exhausted, called CFS and fibromyalgia, and we gave them a nutrient called ribose, which ironically is a sugar, but a healthy sugar, and could even be used as a sugar substitute. In that study, energy increased by an average of 60% after 3 weeks. So it's about 300 patients, 54 health clinics. We gave them the ribose, 5 grams 3 times a day. Average increase in energy, 61%. And what I recommend in the morning is just a vitamin powder and throw in a scoop of ribose, and that's my energy drink each morning. Iodine, we are seeing an epidemic of iodine deficiency that is recurring in the United States. We have lost about half our iodine intake in the last 30 years. And because of that, iodine deficiency, which used to be epidemic, is now recurring. A nice simple way to test for that is to get a tablet that has all 3 iodines, a tri-iodine type tablet, and it's 6 1/4 to 12.5 milligrams. Take 1 tablet a day and give it 1 bottle. You'll know by the end of 1 bottle, you may find that it helps your energy quite dramatically. In addition, fish oil deficiencies are a major problem, and best thing is to get 3 or 4 servings a week of tuna, salmon, herring, sardines, other oily fish. For those of you who are not fish aficionados, though, the best way to get omega-3, to get your fish oil supplementation, and to get your omega-3s, is to use a new product called Vectomega, where 1 tablet replaces 8 regular tablets of fish oil. So instead of taking 16 fish oil pills, you can take 1 or 2 Vectomega, no fish oil burps, much less expensive, very pure, wonderful, wonderful way to get your omega-3 support. This is to me, the best fish oil in the world. And it's not even an oil. It's essential fatty acid. Perfect way to go. So we talked about the type 1, that if you just are exhausted and needing sugar for an energy fix, so we talked about how to create healthy energy. Type 2 sugar addicts are the ones who have as their battle cry, "Feed me now or I will kill you." So for those of you who, when you get hungry, the people around you realize they've got 3 minutes to feed you or they're dead, because you get irritable when you're hungry, you crash under stress, this is adrenal gland exhaustion. Very, very common problem out there these days, getting more common with the stress of modern life. And here's a quiz. So main thing is you get irritable when hungry. A lot of you can tell if you're going to marriage counseling or a divorce attorney, a lot of you don't have marriage problems, you've got type 2 sugar addiction with adrenal fatigue. And you get the irritability when you're hungry, and then you chew the head off of the person around you, and they're afraid. They're afraid for their life when you're hungry. And just tell them that they just need to feed you when you get that way. Also, for those of you who feel like life is a crisis, it seems like life really reflects CNN, Fox, and MSNBC, or whatever you happen to be watching. All 3 of the networks are trying to feed fear. And all 3 of them are largely feeding nonsense. It's meant to entertain you and to scare you enough to keep you watching 24/7. So if you bought into that and you feel like life is a crisis, give yourself 15 points. Or for adrenaline junkies out there, like me, if you enjoy the rush of energy when you feel life is in a crisis or in a whirlwind or just moving really fast, give yourself 15 points. And I'll total that up. And for the score, if you score under 25, you're probably a type B, low-key kind of a person. So, yeah, probably going to have healthy adrenals, doing fine. If you score between 25 and 34, you're getting early adrenal fatigue. And if you score 35 or higher, your body has adrenal exhaustion and it is crying out for help. And it's not that hard to treat for the type 2 adrenal exhaustion, the type 2 sugar addicts. And here are the treatments. Number one, you want to increase your water and salt intake. Now, if you have high blood pressure or heart failure, may not want to push the salt as much. But otherwise, type 2 sugar addicts, and probably most Americans, need more salt, not less, contrary to the myth that's being put out by today's health fashion moguls. You also want to get multiple small meals through the day. Instead of 3 big meals, graze through the day. Have frequent small meals and make your meals high protein and low carb, low sugar. And then the next treatment, if you're a type 2 sugar addict, it's time for an attitude adjustment. Contrary to what the news media would have you believe, life is not a crisis. There may be things to worry about, but ask yourself this simple question. Am I in imminent danger? Ask yourself that. Do you have foreclosure guys literally knocking at your door right now? Are you starving to death? Do you have a disease that is going to kill you before the end of this talk? The answer is probably no, and you're not in imminent danger. And most of the things that stress our adrenals are things we worry about that either have happened and are done, or in the future that never will happen, or that if they do, you'll handle it just fine when it happens. So you want to start to breathe and get off this crisis mode. I remember when I was a kid, the Madison Avenue advertiser executives had this mantra. If you wanted to sell something, their mantra was, sex sells. Now the mantra is, fear sells. And it's no surprise that we are seeing exhausted adrenals blowing out all over the place. And I must admit, I miss the good old days. So when you see people trying to sell you with fear, just say no. So one simple way to do that, there's a wonderful Tai Chi move that if you're watching the news media, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, and they're just saying stuff to try to scare you. And you find and again, it's okay to watch, and it's entertaining for a while. Kind of watch what people are thinking, or what they're trying to put out as today's editorial and how they're trying to shape the news. It's entertaining, and it's fun to watch for a while. But after a while, when you find that your teeth start grinding and it starts feeling bad, remember, I'm just watching this for entertainment and to enjoy myself. And when that happens, you do this Tai Chi move. You pause, you center, and then you reach far over to the side. You grab the remote control, take it, point it at the TV, and click off. Or change to the Comedy Central. So you'll find that your adrenals will feel so much better. Now, there are other natural things you can do for adrenal support as well, including licorice, glandulars, vitamin B5, and vitamin C. All of those can be found in a product called Adrenoplex. Very nice to get natural support. There's a number of good ways to get good adrenal support naturally. Several very good treatments with that. And it will make a big, big difference for you. So we've talked about type 1 and type 2. So type 1, people who are exhausted. Type 2 are people who have adrenal exhaustion. They get irritable and hungry. And type 3 are what I call happy Twinkie hunters. These are people who get the sugar cravings. They're going through the cabinets looking for some chocolate or something sweet to eat. They're not irritable. They're kind of happy going through it, but they just want something sweet. And this is associated often with chronic nasal congestion, sinusitis, spastic colon, or irritable bowel syndrome. And when you have this kind of mix, what you have is yeast or candida overgrowth. Now, some listeners are starting to get a pattern, and they're noticing, I've got all of these. And for those of you who find that you have all 4 sugar addiction types, you usually also have chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. Because what happens is when the sugar addiction cascades one type into the next, it blows a fuse. It's one of the things that contributes to CFS and fibromyalgia. And knowing these treatments, you treat all 4 of the types, it helps not only make the sugar craving go away, but can make the CFS and fibromyalgia go away as well. So let's take a look at the quiz for type 3s. If you have nasal congestion or sinusitis, or if you have spastic colon, or if you have chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia, period, then you flunk the quiz. You are a type 3 and you need treatment. But either of those, give yourself 50 points. You can give yourself 50 for CFS and fibro as well. Do you have you taken antibiotics for more than 2 months in the past, or multiple shorter courses? Give yourself 20. Have you been on antibiotics for acne for more than a month? Give yourself 50 points. Do you have chronic skin fungal infections like jock itch, athlete's foot, or nail or skin infections that are hard to treat? Give yourself 20. I'll give you another trick that's on here now, just not on the quiz. So your ears itch. Do you feel like you have to stick up your finger or a pencil in your ears to keep scratching them? Usually fungal. Do you have postnasal drip or clear your throat a lot? Another 20 points. Or do you have food allergies? Chalk up another 20 points there. So go ahead and give yourself a quick tally, and let's see how you score. So if your score is over 50, you likely have candida. How's that for simple? People with CFS and fibromyalgia, I tell them just presume you have candida. Sinusitis, spastic colon, food allergies, presume candida. And to treat candida, number 1, you got to stop feeding the little buggers. Yeast grow by fermenting sugar. And they thank you when you take one of those 64-ounce Big Burp sodas that you get at the Quickie Mart. Well, that's 3 spoons of sugar, 3/4 teaspoon of sugar per ounce. So that's about 48 spoons of sugar in that bad boy. You pour that down your gut, you've got a fermentation tank. Those yeast are partying. And like most kids when they party, they're making billions of little baby yeasties. So you got to stop feeding the little buggers, which means avoiding sugar. You want to use probiotics. I like the ones that are pearl-coated. And you want to use both prescription and natural antifungal. There's many natural antifungals available. Anti-yeast is the one I like, but there's a lot of good ones. And I will use the medication diflucan, 200 milligrams a day for 6 weeks, which can help the spastic colon and sinusitis go away as well. So we've talked about the 3 different types, with candida being a very common one. I'm going to note also, if you have the sinusitis, you want to go on my website at vitality101.com. There are health instruction sheets for over 100 health conditions. These are also available on the iPhone and Android apps called Cures A to Z. So it's Cures, capital A-Z. But if you have sinusitis, you want to look that up because you want to do nasal rinses. You just go ahead and take a 1/2 to 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a pinch of baking powder, even as much as a 1/4 teaspoon, just like the Arm & Hammer stuff, and add that to some clean lukewarm water and just sniff it up your nose. You use a neti pot and you want to wash that infection out of your nose. And then in my book I talk about special nose sprays that will help knock out the sinusitis without surgery. You'll find they work very, very well. And this is all on the website as well for free. Now, let's take a look at the 4th type of sugar addiction. And these are folks that are depressed and craving carbohydrates. And this is usually occurring because of hormonal deficiencies, especially perimenopause. It can happen around your cycle if you have PMS. So it'll happen around ovulation, around day 15 of your cycle, and then right before your period. So if people know that, if the people around you start making marks on calendars, and it seems to be each month and it seems to correlate to your menstrual cycle, you've got PMS. And, or if you're starting to get it around your menopause or in men around andropause for the hormonal deficiencies. This is when the hormone deficiencies cause depression, anxiety, and sugar craving. So for women, if you're feeling worse around your cycle, or the symptoms are happening around perimenopause, say when you're hitting 40s, because estrogen deficiency occurs for about 10 to 15 years before the blood tests become abnormal and your periods stop. But here are some of the symptoms. If you're getting increased sugar cravings around your period, fatigue, moodiness, these are signs of perimenopause. If you have insomnia, you can't sleep around your period. And then also in your 40s, as people get decreased vaginal lubrication, these are signs of estrogen deficiency. For men, the way to tell testosterone deficiency is it causes depression, loss of libido, loss of erectile function, high blood pressure, weight gain. It can cause diabetes or prediabetes, high cholesterol. So if I see a man with high cholesterol, I'm going to suspect either low testosterone or low thyroid. If I see a woman with high cholesterol, I'm going to suspect low thyroid. And I'm certainly going to treat those before I consider a cholesterol blocker medication, most of which are used inappropriately and unnecessarily. But if we have a man who has metabolic syndrome, and high blood pressure, weight gain, on cholesterol medications, they probably have testosterone deficiency. If you give bioidentical natural testosterone by prescription, you'll find that all of these problems will often go away along with the sugar craving. So what will most doctors do? Most doctors say, oh, okay, well, we'll do a blood test for the hormonal deficiencies. Well, the tests are simply not reliable. The standard blood testing for hormonal deficiencies will not show the problem until it is very severe and until it puts you in the lowest 2% of the population. That is the definition of the normal range. They take 100 people, they plot them out, and the highest and lowest 2% are defined as abnormal. The 95 in the middle are the normal range. So if I wanted a normal range for shoe sizes, I'd sit down in the mall, take the next 100 people that come by, I'd get a normal shoe size range of 4 to 13. If a couple babies walked by, I might get a normal range that went from 1 to 13. Or a couple Texans walk by, the normal range might go up to 15 or 16. So, but that would be the normal range, so say 3 to 14, 3 to 13. And say you accidentally put on a size 13 shoe if you're a gal, or I put on your size 5 shoe when you go to the shoe doctor. The shoe doctor will do the test and say, nothing wrong with your shoe. It's in the normal range. And that's an exact analogy to what goes on when you go to your doctor's office. The tests are not reliable. How do you tell if you have hormonal deficiencies? By the symptoms. But you'll find that eliminating the sugar addiction and the other problems caused by low estrogen, progesterone, or testosterone can be life transforming. So treating those hormone deficiencies make all the difference in the world. So let's see, how do you tell if the blood tests aren't reliable? For the gals, take this quiz. Have you had a hysterectomy or ovarian surgery? Even if you're in your 20s, give yourself 30 points. Do you have decreased vaginal lubrication, dryness? Give yourself 25 points. Has your sex drive kind of gotten up and gone? Give yourself 15 points. And people with CFS and fibro, they know this. When you ask how's your libido, the answer usually is, what libido? And that also goes away with treatment for the CFS and fibro. The libido comes back. So in the week before and around your period, do you also have these symptoms getting worse? Insomnia, headaches, fatigue, or hot flashes or sweats? Give yourself 15 points, or for the last one, 20 points for each of those. Now take a moment, add up your score. Good. Now let's give men a chance to take the quiz as well. So do you have decreased libido? Go ahead and give yourself 20 points. Do you have erectile dysfunction? Another 20. High blood pressure? 20. Cholesterol? Diabetes? Spare tire around your waist? 20 points for each of those. So guys, go ahead and add up your score. And let's take a look at how you did. So for women, if you scored 30 or higher, you're starting to get symptoms of estrogen or progesterone deficiency. So that's much more reliable than the testing, the blood testing. For men, if you score over 50, these symptoms suggest that your testosterone levels are becoming inadequate. Now again, the doctor will check the blood test, and unless you're lower than most 80-year-old men out there, they'll say, oh, no, Jim, it's in the normal range. No. If it's under 450, anything under about 220, they'll say is normal. And most 80-year-olds walking around the street have higher than that. And if you're 55 years old, that's not working very well for you. So if you have the symptoms and your testosterone level is under 450, it's deficient. And you deserve a trial of testosterone treatment, bioidentical by prescription. So treatment, again, virtually always, if you're going to use hormones, use bioidentical. The reason for the synthetic hormones, there's a very important reason that doctors have been trained to use synthetic hormones. And that's because they are patentable, and therefore they could charge a lot of money for them. The natural hormones, they couldn't. But now they've learned a trick. You can't patent the natural hormone, but you can patent the delivery vehicle or the gel that they put it in. So now, even the prescription forms are, at the standard pharmacy, are turning to bioidentical, and they've jacked the price up obscenely. So bioidentical hormones, for men who need testosterone, I'll give you a little hint. It's going to cost hundreds, as much as $1,000 a month for the standard prescription. If your insurance doesn't cover it, just get it made by a compounding pharmacy, where it'll cost you about $30 to $60 a month, about a tenth of the amount of the regular. For the gals, get some edamame. These are the soybean pods. You can get them at many health food stores in the freezer section, a lot of Giants and Safeways. Just look for edamame. They look like the pea pods, and like peas, you eat the beans on the outside, don't eat the pod. Heat them up, put some paprika, some salt on it. They taste really good, and there's all kinds of good recipes. Also for gals, if you're getting the hot flashes as your main problem, get some black cohosh. The brand I would get is called Dermafemin. 2 twice a day, give it 2 months. It'll often settle that down. And then you'll find that you can go ahead and drop it to 1 twice a day. And for those of you with PMS, take some vitamin B6, about 200 milligrams a day, magnesium, 200 to 400 milligrams a day, and get primrose or borage oil. Primrose is a little more expensive, but it's a bit better. But you want to get the brand that's called Ephamol or the Linus Pauling brand. There's a lot of quality issues. If the cost is an issue, borage oil is cheaper and a perfectly reasonable one to try at 3,000 milligrams a day for 3 months, and then take it just a week before your period. These things can really help decrease the symptoms of type 4 sugar addiction and help knock out the cravings. Now, let's take a moment and look at some of the other common conditions associated with sugar addiction and how to treat those. So, number one, osteoporosis or loss of bone density, very common. You'll see it, it's being called osteopenia, which is if it's mild, and osteoporosis if it's severe. And you want to supplement with the bone-building nutrients. We talk about calcium a lot, and you've heard that. Calcium is not the answer for osteoporosis. In fact, calcium taken by itself is toxic. It increases heart attack death risk by 31%. And calcium must be combined with vitamin D and vitamin K and magnesium to make it healthy. So the simplest thing is to go ahead, and there's a product called OsteoStrong, which combines most of the nutrients you need for optimal bone health. And then, especially important, is the mineral strontium. This mineral increases bone density 170% as much as medications like Fosamax. It's almost twice as effective in many, many numerous repeat long-term studies. It increases not just the laying down of new bone, but also a remodeling of old bone. It's been very safe over long-term use. Unlike the osteoporosis medications, bisphosphonates, which have been shown to increase fractures after 5 years of use. And many doctors say that medications should not be used over 5 years. where the strontium has been shown to continue to improve bone density and decrease fractures for 8 years and beyond. I'd recommend a simple way to do this is to get the strontium pills, 340 milligrams. Take 1 a day if you have osteopenia or 2 a day if you have osteoporosis. And then get a good bone building formula like OsteoStrong. These can both be taken along with your medications. Again, I tend not to use the medications unless people have osteopenia. And even then, just cautiously, the natural remedies are far more effective, safer, and certainly much cheaper. Let's talk about low thyroid. Thyroid's your body's gas pedal. Symptoms of low thyroid: tired, achy, weight gain, cold intolerant, thinning of the outer third of your eyebrows. These are symptoms of low thyroid. And again, low iodine is a major cause of symptoms of low thyroid, even if your blood tests are normal. Symptoms of low iodine include sugar cravings, low body temperature, under 98.3 for the daytime, fatigue, and a very good marker would be breast tenderness or cysts. If I have a woman with breast cysts or breast tenderness, certainly I'm going to rule out breast cancer and do the proper things, but I'm going to treat with iodine, 12.5 milligrams a day, and triiodine, very good form. But you give the iodine, and what you'll find is that after a month or two, not just will your whole body feel better, but the breast cysts and breast tenderness will often go away. Other nutrients necessary for thyroid will be tyrosine, selenium. These are all in the vitamin powder I talked about earlier, including 200 micrograms of iodine. But if you have, it's worth getting a bottle of the triiodine. This is 6,250 micrograms to 12,500 micrograms. It's 12.5 milligrams, 1 a day. 2 cautions I'll give: if you get acne, lower the dose. That means it's too high. A very, very small percent of people will get solar plexus indigestion. That's pretty nasty. It's unusual, but if it does happen, then stop the iodine. It takes 3 days to start and 3 days to go away. But most people find that the iodine, simple, cheap, safe, healthy way to go ahead and bump their energy up. And it's worth getting a bottle and just take it for 1 bottle and see how you feel. Now, another common problem, dry eyes and dry mouth. We'll see a lot of folks will have that. Also, a lot of people will have bladder pain called interstitial cystitis. Now, it's normal for chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia to have urinary urgency and frequency. But when it's so bad that you want your bladder surgically removed, that's interstitial cystitis. My book, Pain Free 123, talks about that at depth, and there's information on the website. But for general dry eyes and mouth, you can see it with Sjogren's. That's where it gets the attention, like Venus Williams had. But it's very common for CFS, fibro, and sugar addicts. And a very good way to treat the dry eyes and mouth to help restore normal optimal lubrication is within a special omega-7 source called sea buckthorn oil. And this is a very, very rich in omega-7s. And essential fatty acids and antioxidants. Not only will it help dry eyes and mouth, but it may help the interstitial cystitis. It may also help restore the normal mucus lining in the stomach for indigestion. It helps lubricate your body, whether it's mouth or eye dryness, vaginal tissue, stomach lining, all kinds of areas. Sea buckthorn oil, 1,000 milligrams twice a day, or Hydra 7, is a wonderful way to hydrate and lubricate your body. It may decrease deep wrinkles, increase skin softness. It takes a while. You'll want to give it a couple months to work. But this is an excellent way to lubricate the body. Other things for dry eyes and mouth would be fish oil, B vitamins, magnesium, the vitamin powder we talked about before, and the Vector Mega. Depression and anxiety, not a Prozac deficiency. It's a deficiency of many of the brain chemicals that come from amino acids, and sugar really drives those brain chemicals into the tank. It initially helps raise serotonin, so that's why you'll see in the TV shows when the gal has a horrible day and she walks into the bar and says, "Bartender, give me a pint." and he's, you see the pint coming sliding down the counter, and that's a pint of Ben and Jerry's. Because people learn early on that for short term, chocolate and more especially the sugars will help the anxiety and depression, but in the long term, it makes it worse. So, for short periods it's one thing, but once you're in the habit of just reaching for the sugar, and you're getting worse and worse, you got to stop the sugar. Omega fatty acids, so fish oils, help depression and anxiety, more effective than Prozac, and will decrease heart attacks to boot. So a very simple way to get that, as you mentioned before, I like phospholipid-bound omega fatty acids that are very pure. With the form we mentioned, the Vector Omega, 1 or 2 tablets a day. Replaces 8 to 16 fish oil capsules. It's a very good way to get it. Part of my daily regimen. I take the vitamin powder, a scoop of ribose, a pearl, and I take a Vector Omega. That's my morning regimen. Now, pain is another common problem, and we see a lot of people have major pain issues when they have the sugar. 1 out of 4 Americans suffer from chronic pain, and people don't realize that sugar triggers chronic inflammation, not just diabetes, heart disease, and obesity, but it causes your body to be in a high inflammatory alert stage, and that can be a root cause of pain. Now, pain is your body's way of saying something needs attention. It's like the oil light on your dashboard. And part of what it may be telling you is to get off the excess sugar and to get more omega-3 fish oils. What do most doctors hear it saying? They hear it say, oh, throw some Motrin at it or similar arthritis medications. Well, those medications kill over 30,000 Americans each year, it's estimated. These are unnecessary deaths. And I say unnecessary, why? Because the natural remedies and head-on studies with the standard arthritis medications knock their socks off. They are way more effective and far safer. So for those of you with pain, the best, what I found to be the most effective pain treatment in the world, more effective than morphine, is a mix of a special highly absorbed curcumin, DLPA, a special boswellia, and nattokinase. This can be found in combination with a product called Curamin, or in bedtime, Curamin PM to help you sleep. Give it 6 weeks to work. It's going to work way quicker than that. For fibromyalgia pain, I have people take 2 tablets 3 times a day. Other pains, 1 tablet 3 times a day. Give it to 6 weeks. It can be taken along with any other pain medication you're taking or any other natural remedies you're taking. And then you'll find by 6 weeks, most of your pain will be much lower or gone. And you can often then, your doctor can stop the pain medications that you're taking, and you'll stay feeling very, very comfortable and often pain-free. For those with asthma or colitis, that's a very common problem, especially from the inflammation from the sugar. And asthma is inflammation in the airways, colitis, inflammation in the intestines. Wonderful treatment, boswellia. This herb, also known as frankincense, is a wonderful anti-inflammatory. And the adding a special curcumin can help with that. So if you have asthma or colitis, I recommend boswellia, and an excellent form is one called Boscure that combines a special curcumin and boswellia. These 2 together, you will be amazed, much more effective than many of the medications, and again, can be taken with any of the medications for these diseases. In studies for colitis, it was as effective as the sulfasalazine medications, for example. So we've talked about what the problem is, but we have 150 pounds of sugar. It's triggering inflammation. It's triggering emotional, the physical problems. We've talked about its addiction, and that you need to treat your addiction type. Are you a type 1 that's exhausted, a type 2 that gets adrenal exhaustion and febrile, I'll kill you? Are you type 3 candida overgrowth with sinusitis, spastic colon, or you're type 4 where you're getting perimenopausal or andropausal and getting estrogen testosterone deficiency? Or if you have CFS and fibromyalgia where it's snowballed into all 4 of these types. So the book will go through each type, the Beat Sugar Addiction Now book. and teach you what you need to do. Now, you can get the book at vitality101.com or at Amazon. But here are some tips for reducing sugar intake. Number one, the things that give you the most pleasure, keep. Get rid of those things that give you the least pleasure, like fast food, processed foods. Get rid of sodas. If you need to switch to diet sodas, you can. As Zevia has a whole line of sugar-free, stevia-sweetened sodas that you can get at the health food store. Fruit drinks and juices loaded with sugar, just like sodas, knock those out. Switch from white flour to whole grain, and start to read ingredients. Anything that has sugar as one of its first 3 ingredients, put it back on the shelf. Now that means you're going to put back 30 things and you're going to go, is anything edible in the supermarket? And then you'll find the 31st one has low sugar and tastes way better than what you've been having. And now you've learned that brand will work for you. And soon your whole shopping cart will be things that taste great but that are not sugar loaded. Do you know why they load those other ones with sugar? Because the food is rancid and junk, and they've got to cover the taste of it because nobody would eat it otherwise, and it's dirt cheap, and they don't care if it kills you. So get the foods that are lower in the sugar. Sugar has many names on the ingredients: sugar, sucrose, glucose, fructose, corn syrup. All of these just names for sugar. Now, you're going to say, well, how about my chocolate? And I'm going to say, avoid sugar, but I will add the 3 magic words, except for chocolate. I consider chocolate to be a health food. It's not low calorie, so you want to have it in moderation. But did you know that eating dark chocolate, just a square or less a day, has been associated with being 25 times as effective as cholesterol-lowering medications in preventing heart disease? Chocolate also increases energy. It's chock full of antioxidants, and it's a pretty decent antidepressant. So I think chocolate is good for you. Just go for the best tasting one you can. Savor it in moderation. Better yet, get sugar-free ones. There's AbdullahsCandies.com. They have a whole line of chocolates, but they also have a sugar-free line that is yummy. It is really, really good. You will not feel deprived one bit. And just so you have your cake and your chocolate with no sugar. If you're out with friends or you're at a restaurant and you decide to have dessert, get one dessert for the table and just have a few bites. You're at a dinner or whatever, just take 2 bites of the dessert, put it on your plate, walk away from the serving dish. As long as you have a couple bites on your plate, you can walk anywhere in the world and walk away from that serving dish. But if you're like feeling guilty and then you inhale it down and then you didn't even taste it because you're too ghosty feeling guilty, and there's that cake in front of you and you're going to take 2 more and keep repeating, you're going to be having 50 spoons, have no pleasure from it. Where just take a couple spoons, walk away, and savor it with no guilt. Now, the first 7 days that you come off sugar, there may be some withdrawal, much less if you treat your sugar addiction type. But there may be some moodiness or irritability, so taper down instead of going cold turkey. It will pass in 7 to 10 days, and quicker if you're doing treating for the sugar addiction type. If you're cutting down caffeine, now again, I'm not against coffee. Just keep it to 1 or 2 cups a day. Same thing with tea. I have my morning tea, and nothing wrong with a cup or 2 a day. It's when you're going above 3 or 4 that it's starting to become a drug that's causing problems. And in that case, taper it down so you can avoid the caffeine withdrawal headaches. Now, let's take a moment before we wrap up to look at sugar substitutes, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as we say. There are healthy sugar substitutes. What I use is called stevia. Now, some stevia, if it's not filtered, will taste bitter and horrible. Others taste really good. I use one by Body Ecology called stevia. And it's a liquid. That's one my wife and I use. It tastes great. We have it available on our website at vitality101.com. Also available directly from the company at 1-800-4-STEVIA. That's the best one I found. Sweet Leaf also has an excellent stevia. You can get that in most health food stores. Many others taste awful. Sugar alcohols like erythritol, these are just fine as well. Anything that ends in OL. The main problem with these is that they can trigger a laxative effect. So maltitol, for example, in sugar-free chocolates is the main sweetener. it's okay for sugar addicts, but if you get too much gas or diarrhea, you don't need to cut back the amount. Chemical sweeteners, saccharin, that's the pink packet, sucralose or Splenda, yellow packet, NutraSweet, this is the blue packet. I think if you're out and about and all that you have available would be sugar versus one of these three, go for the pink packet. It's not a health food, it's saccharin, it's a chemical, but I think it has a long and fairly strong safety record. Not perfect, but better than sugar. The Splenda, I think the jury is out, and the NutraSweet, my impression is somebody got paid off at the FDA or they never would have approved it. Now, many people can take it and handle it just fine, but for a lot of people it's toxic. So a couple books, Beat Sugar Addiction Now, again, at Vitality101.com, NutriBooks or Amazon. These are both available for Kindle readers, and Beat Sugar Addiction Now cookbook, that's our new cookbook. Just came out. This one's available at Amazon. Maybe in bookstores already, but this one just came out. So the Beat Sugar Addiction Now cookbook. To give an idea, here's one of the recipes, a sample recipe for grape mushroom and asparagus omelet. And it's broken down by types of sugar addiction, but most of the recipes will be great for most types of sugar addicts. But it'll tell you if you're type 1, here are the ones to start with. There's a whole bunch of them, and then type 2s, 3s, 4s, general recipes. And once you've gone through the program for about 2-3 months, you'll be able to enjoy all of the recipes in the book because you will no longer be a sugar addict and you'll be feeling so much better. So I want to thank everybody for coming. Here's a couple other tools. There's a free iPhone and Android app called Cures A to Z. There's approaching 1.25 million downloads now, and it's free, which is really, really nice. It's like having a holistic doctor in your pocket. Anything that ails you from acne to zoster, you just look it up and it says, here's what it is and here's how you treat it. So I want to thank everybody for coming and let you know that these things you can do will make you feel so much better and can really help you get your life back. So thanks for coming. We're going to stay on for about 40 minutes and take questions, but I'm going to go ahead and pass the ball back over to Cheryl.
Thank you, Dr. Teitelbaum. Every single time you speak, I learn something new. Thank you again for all of this information. And it looks like, it looks like we already have quite a few things both in our Q&A and in our chat box. So let's get started. A lot of the folks have asked about phone numbers and websites. Jennifer Hansgate, our webinar producer, will provide that information for you. So just keep an eye on the chat box and she'll provide that. So let's go to some of the more medical questions. Here's one. According to Dr. Rita Marie-Loscalzo, the latest research on hormones shows that eating small meals throughout the day, grazing, actually leads to insulin resistance and that the way to balance your blood sugar is to eat 3 meals per day. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, what you're going to find is that there's no one thing that's best for everybody. So if you're looking at the average population, having them not eat all day is the best thing to do. But if you look at somebody who's having sugar problems, you're going to get the massive swings in blood sugar that will trigger insulin resistance much more quickly. So the research that they're talking about may apply in general to the general population, but it's not going to apply to type 2 sugar addicts because you have very different blood sugar metabolism going on in those cases.
I've heard some interesting things about that as well, and I think it matters a great deal what you're eating, that for some people, eating several meals a day of things that are low on the glycemic index is quite a different story than someone who's eating 5 meals a day with lots of refined sugars and carbs, which is extremely hard.
With Coca-Cola.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Indeed. Good point.
All right. Here's a question about Candida. Can a man reinfect a woman with Candida through sexual activity? And so how do you gain cooperation for treatment? Do you have to treat both a man and a woman to eradicate yeast issues, at least in the genital area?
Usually not, but in some difficult cases I've had to. So most often Candida is normal in the environment, and it has more to do with a person's own resistance to the Candida. So it's generally not going to be passed in that way because it's already in the environment, not just one of many kinds of ways. But there have been cases where both partners have a lot of yeast issues and they're both kind of on the ropes, and I will treat them simultaneously with the diflucan. Now the diflucan is prescription, so the doctor will need to give it. It's 6 weeks, so you need to find a holistic doctor because most standard doctors go, that's holistic nonsense. There's no such thing as Candida. I will note, by the way, I am back to treating patients. I finished a 4-year sabbatical where I wrote 4 books, and so now we do phone consultations. We treat people from all over the world by phone, and including the Candida, including most of the CFS and fibromyalgia. But yeah, most of the time I don't worry about passing it back and forth that way, but there are exceptions to that rule as well.
Dr. Teitelbaum, do you find that yeast is often hiding in the gastrointestinal tract, that that's sort of like where the reservoir might be?
That's exactly where it is.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not worried about the 8 to 12 inch area in the vaginal opening. I'm worried about the 20 feet of gut.
Yeah.
That's the main place that it hides out. And you know, medicine, we have this thing: if there's no test for it, it doesn't exist. It's kind of like a little 3-year-old who covers her eyes and says, "I'm invisible now." You know, and medicine has that same kind of silliness. Well, there's no test for it, so it doesn't exist. It's like, okay, whatever. Go play in the corner, cover your eyes, make believe you're invisible. Go away. I tell the doctors to do. But it's so you need to treat the gut. So you need to cut out the sugar. You need to give the probiotics. But again, the diflucan can be very helpful in that regard. And then it's the ones in the gut, it's the reaction to that most often triggers a sinusitis, and definitely very often triggers a spastic colon and irritable bowel syndrome. Spastic colon and irritable bowel means you have gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, and the doctor doesn't know why, and they don't want to say, I don't know why. So we say, I know, we'll call it spastic colon. Say, now you have that. But all it means is that you have the symptoms, you don't know why. They don't know why because they're not looking for the candida and other gut infections and per digestive issues that are causing the spastic colon and the food allergies. So
here's
no
another.
surprise that they don't know.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I loved it. I listened to one of your lectures one time, and you said when you were talking about chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia that if doctors couldn't see it on an X-ray, find it in a blood test, or look at it under a microscope, then you, the patient, must be crazy. And I've always remembered that's we can't figure out what it is. Well, obviously it's your fault. Okay, let's see.
I don't know what's wrong with you, so you're crazy. Yeah.
Here's one that could be an entire webinar. What are the best supplements for fibro pain and chronic fatigue? And I know you outlined a few, but the second part of the question is also, what does gabapentin do? My doctor has me on that now.
Okay, so let's take both of those. Pain, best thing for pain is to treat the underlying cause, which is the SHINE protocol. And CFS and fibromyalgia are very treatable. In our study, which is a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled study, 91% of chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia patients improved with an average 90% increase in quality of life by treating with SHINE. So the research shows this is very treatable. We've treated thousands of patients. Fibromyalgia and fatigue centers have treated tens of thousands of patients. So the website vitality101.com has a symptom analysis program where you can go and put in your symptoms. It'll, even if you have your lab tests, it'll even analyze the pertinent labs, although the labs are not necessary, and tell you what's causing your CFS and fibromyalgia and how to treat it. Because I saw somebody had a private question that they asked that question. They said, okay, so we got that covered. But when you treat SHINE, research showed that the pain dropped by over half, and most people no longer even qualified as fibromyalgia. So it's like putting oil in and the oil light goes out. You put SHINE in and the SHINE light goes, the pain goes off. But my favorite supplements, starting with sleep, there's Revitalizing Sleep Formula. Hormones, there's the adrenal product that you guys have, and adrenal stress end. There's a number of good ones. Cheryl, did you want to talk about the Adrenoplex for a moment? Okay, we'll be on in a bit. Iodine, try iodine. No reason not to just try that. Get a bottle. Get the 6 to 12.5 milligram one. Take one a day. And a lot of people find they just feel a lot better. You know, for the infections, anti-yeast, nutritional support, the Energy Revitalization System vitamin powder, the Corvalin, and the Vectomega are wonderful for outstanding overall nutritional support. For pain, the Curamin is a pain relief miracle. There's a healthy knees and joints for those who just have arthritis, but the Curamin is more effective than anything I've seen ever anywhere in my 35 years of pain management. Much more effective than the medications. Now, they can be taken with the medications. Gabapentin and Neurontin is an excellent pain medication. It stimulates basically GABA, even though they'll argue with that. They'll say it's a sodium anti-channel ligand, but I think it's having GABA effect. GABA is your body's natural Valium. It relaxes the muscles and calms you, but without the addictive issues with it. So the gabapentin, I think, is a very good pain medication. Ultram, Flexeril, Scalaxin, good pain medications. Lyrica, Savella, Cymbalta, very expensive pain medications. Which one will your doctor hear about? Guess. The expensive ones. The first ones are dirt cheap. So that's a long answer to the question, but virtually all pain can be effectively treated. I've treated thousands of chronic pain patients, and I can count on my fingers how many people we've not been able to get really good solid pain relief for.
Excellent. And I am sorry, there's a little bit of a lag time when I reactivate my microphone, and I was looking through the chat and the QA boxes to see what our next one was and wasn't able to get back fast enough, so sorry for that delay. Let's see, we have questions again. What is the dosage and for how long would you recommend the licorice, the B5, and the vitamin C? Are those okay by themselves without taking the glandulars?
Yes, and basically the licorice, what I'd recommend is 200 milligrams of standardized to 5% of the glycyrrhizin component. That much is not going to aggravate high blood pressure, but it will help support blood pressure and will help support adrenal function. You can get licorice tea bags. And licorice candy doesn't have any licorice in it, but you can get 1 cup of licorice tea a day. Or you can go ahead, and there's a lot of licorice extracts, in which case for those you want to follow the label directions, but be cautious on those if you have high blood pressure. The vitamin B5 or pantothenic acid, 50 to 100 milligrams a day. Higher, some people go with even higher levels. And the vitamin C, 500 to 750 milligrams a day. 500 will pretty much optimize it and give you that effect with it as well. I would take it as long as you're having symptoms of low adrenal, usually at least 6 to 9 months to 18 months. Although usually as people heal up after 9 to 18 months, they can wean off most everything.
Excellent. We have a question here about bioidentical hormones. How long can you be on bioidentical hormones? And is it okay to start it at the age of 59? So I want to, this may not be exactly what she intended, but there has been some information. Yeah, forever and yes. Okay, excellent. But there has been some news in the media about that if you start them right at menopause, right when you have cessation of menstrual cycles, that it behaves differently than if you start them a couple of years after cessation. So you don't ascribe to that. It's more of a it can be useful at any age.
What I'm going to say is that you're saying, is it okay to reproduce what the normal milieu that was healthy for my body for most all of my lifetime? And that data suggests that maintaining that milieu, people live longer and healthier, or at least feel better. So as long as you're using a dose, using bioidentical, and you're using a dose that restores normal function when you're 30 to 40 years old, for example, I don't have a problem with maintaining that for the person's entire lifetime. The data suggests they live healthier, younger, and longer. Or as put differently, they die very young, but very late in life. So I don't have an issue with maintaining a normal, healthy level forever. Now, people say, well, it's not normal when you're 80 to have it be that high. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that our bodies have programmed in a self-destruct. You know, once we're past the reproductive age, we stick around a while to give wisdom to the children who ignore us anyway, and then we, you know, it's meant for us to die off and make room for the newcomers coming in. And, you know, we kind of like wither like flowers on the vine and then fall off or leaves, and that's okay. That's all part of the life cycle. But I figure if I'm going to, you know, be a leaf that falls off the tree, I'd rather have it be later and then have me be as healthy a leaf as I can for the whole time. And then when it comes time to drop, to just float away without worrying about it. But I don't feel the need to get withered along the way. So, but the thing is that they're finding that much lower doses than we've used historically in the past work just as well. So where we used to use 2.5 milligrams of Biest 15 years ago, now we're using less than 1/10 that amount and still getting very good responses. And I think that it's reasonable. Yes, it may act differently depending on what age. If you keep somebody from going into menopause versus they're in menopause and now you're revving the equipment back up, they do act differently. But I think it's still reasonable to do so, and I think it's still healthy for people. Not everybody has to do it, but I think it's reasonable to do so.
And I also have a question. I'll add myself to the chat list. I have heard that when you're using the estrogens and the testosterones, that the creams are far healthier than trying to take it orally because of the way that the liver treats topical applications versus oral applications. Is that true?
I agree. Because when you take it by mouth, all of it goes directly to the liver, where when our ovaries and testes are making it, it goes to the entire bloodstream, and the liver doesn't see any more than the rest of the body sees. But we get what's called liver first pass. Everything that you eat in your gut goes through the liver filter first, and then goes to the body. So you get this very high amount that goes to the liver, and it's problematic. You don't want massive doses of estrogen and testosterone going to the liver. So I definitely prefer the topicals.
Excellent. That's the first time I've heard it explained that way. That makes a lot of sense. Here's another question on the same topic. What is the easiest way to transition from the synthetic hormones to the natural forms?
It's tricky sometimes. A lot of times, I think that Premarin and Provera never should have been released on the market. On the other hand, once the Provera, I will switch them from the 10 of Provera, just switch them right over to Prometrium. And that people seem to do okay with, which is the bioidentical progesterone and 100 milligrams at bedtime. The estrogen's a bit harder. The estrogens are synthetic pregnant horse urine, and your body has adapted, I hate to say, to the milieu of a pregnant horse, but it's kind of done that. And now to switch over to this very gentle form is an adaptation. So I found, frankly, that if a woman's been on it more than 5 years, their body's adapted to it, and I just let it, and if it's working, I let it be. But if they're having problems from it, or they just really want to make the switch, what I'll do is cut down the amount of the synthetic until it's down to about 0.3, 0.25 of the Premarin equivalent to conjugated estrogen. And then I'll switch them over to Biest, 2.5 milligrams. And then either that or to the estrogen patch, the 0.1, but probably the Biest 2.5, and then slowly work them down from there.
Okay, now switching gears, here's a question about the thyroid. Can I take iodine? I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis.
Yes. Now here's the thing. With Hashimoto's, which is the main cause of thyroid inflammation and low thyroid in the country, when you start taking iodine, it kind of wakes up the gland and can wake up the inflammation a little bit at the same time. But what happens is that that's just an initial phenomenon, and then it settles down the inflammation and people feel much better. The funny thing is that they seem to get more of that initial iodine reaction when you start with really low dosing. And we'll see it sometimes from the vitamin powder, but not often. There's 200 micrograms in there. But people who take the triiodine at the 6.25 to 12.5 milligram most often bypass that issue, and they feel so much better taking the iodine. And it can be taken with the thyroid hormone and with the vitamin powder. They can all be taken together.
Excellent. How long after cutting out sugar will symptoms decrease and go away?
Well, you're going to find that there's often withdrawal symptoms for the first 3 to 10 days, say. Unless, again, if you do treat the sugar addiction types. But I tell people on the treatments that we're talking about here, within a month, people are going to be feeling a lot better. And in terms of the coming off the sugar, within about 2 weeks, you're going to feel dramatically better. What will happen is after 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, let's say, you will have unmasked what the sugar is causing, which means if you do, you know, a soda now, you don't even notice that it's causing the problem because you feel so lousy overall and it is still in the mix. But once you're 3 weeks off sugar and you take that soda, you're going to feel like you got hit in the head with a sledgehammer. You're going to feel sugared out. It's going to like, and you're going to recognize it, and you're going to go, I'm not doing that because it feels awful. So let me give two answers. You'll feel better in a couple of days, but I'm going to say give it 3 weeks just to err on the side of being conservative with it.
Excellent. Another question about blood sugar is and candida. Are fruit and whole carbohydrates okay on an anti-candida diet?
The fruit juice is not, because the fruit juice is a concentrated sugar, has as much sugar as soda pop does. It has the same 3/4 teaspoon sugar per ounce. But whole fruits are okay. So if you want to have an apple or two a day, or an orange or two a day, or a slice of watermelon, that's okay. And you say, well, why one and not the other? Well, if you drink 16 ounces of orange juice, that's 8 oranges worth of sugar. If you want to sit down and eat 8 oranges at a pop, God bless, go for it. Most people won't. So enjoy the fruit, but leave out the fruit juices. And fruit should be whole fruit, not these canned fruits that are loaded in sugar water. You know, whole fresh fruit is fine.
And the whole carbohydrates?
The whole grains are fine as well. Avoid the white flour, which acts a good bit like sugar in some folks, and go with the whole grains. And I think that's just fine thing to do. But people find a high-protein, low-carb diet will feel best if they're a type 2. But let me give this one rule of thumb for folks. Well, 2 rules of thumb. One, the closer you get to a whole food diet, that's the key. If it's like the way it was when it came out of the ground or from the animal, that's the healthiest it is. And point 2 is that there's no one diet that's the best for everybody. If there was, then the universe wouldn't have had to make all the diversity we had. It would give us this one good for everybody food that would go on the good for everybody tree, and there would be nothing else. The reason we have such diversity is there's that much diversity in people. And everybody needs different things and feels best with different things, and that changes from time to time in one's life. So see what leaves you feeling the best overall. I'm not saying an hour later while you're riding on a sugar high, but overall, what diet leaves you feeling the best? And I'm going to say that's the one that's the best for you.
Here's another question. When you talked about the curcumin blend earlier for pain, for fibromyalgia pain, do you also recommend it in placement of NSAIDs, which are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs? Some NSAIDs are over-the-counter, some NSAIDs are prescription. They're things like ibuprofen and naproxen, et cetera. So they want to know if they can use that same blend for headaches or temporary aches and pains. Does it also help with that?
Yes. Hey, I finally gave a simple yes or no.
Oh,
right.
A one-word answer. I'm going to write that down. On this day.
It's wonderful for pain. The caution I will give is natural remedies sometimes take longer to work. Now, often with the Curamin, you'll see effects within an hour or so, and it can be marked. But the effects build over 6 weeks to their maximum, where the Motrin, Naproxen, the prescriptions, they will kick in more quickly and then kill you. So that's kind of the distinction between them. And so what I tell people is that if you're taking the Naproxen or you're taking the medication, add the Curamin to it. And then give it 6 weeks, and then you'll find you can usually stop the medication, or often well before that. But yeah, generally, if you have a headache, it's funny, if I don't get headaches very often, but what I'll do, or if I have a pain, I have a thumb tendonitis, the kind that they like to operate on, and when I get these things, like it's more curiosity. I don't worry about it, I just play with it, because that's how I learn about pain, and I do different things. But when I was done playing with it, I said, okay, you know, I want to be able to type again and stuff. So I took the Curamin, and I took another product called N-Pain, and I used a topical, and 3 hours later, the pain was on its way, and by 2 days later, it was gone, and then it came back. So, yes, these can be used for both acute pains and long-term for chronic pains. They can be used with the medications or to help wean off the medications, or preferably instead of the medications. And they're very, very effective. They're much more effective than the medications.
Excellent. Here's a question about a staph infection. The doctor told me that I had a staph infection in my nose after I told him that it itched. Is this something I should be concerned about?
Well, did he put a Q-tip up your nose and culture it, or is he just kind of guessing? If he did put a Q-tip up your nose and culture it, what are the sensitivities on the staph? Staph and strep can be a normal bug to live in the nose. More often the itching in the nose is candida. So if he did a Q-tip deep up the nose where he felt like he was kind of poke your eye out with it and did a culture, that's a different thing than if he just kind of pulled that statement out of his nose, so to speak, in which case I'd kind of ignore it. But having said that, if there is a staph, some of them are multiple antibiotic resistant staph. And then, but there's a sinusitis nose spray that I talk about on the website under sinusitis at the Vitality 101. And most of the products we talk about can be found at Vitality 101. Most of the information we talk about under the health conditions A to Z, it's all there laid out for free. So you can get my books and the rest. My publishers don't like that I say, but most of the information is for free on the website anyway. So it just takes a little more hunting and sleuthing. But the sinusitis spray by ITC Pharmacy, it's a compounding pharmacy, has Bactroban, which is an antibacterial, and xylitol, which will kill most of the staph. Kitty cat decided to join in, sorry for a second. Kill most of the staph and other bacteria, and it'll also knock out the candida and a lot of the viruses and other bugs. So yes, these things can be very readily treated in that way. But my first reaction is I would need to know why he said you have the staph, but that you have the staph by itself doesn't necessarily mean much, and I'm not even convinced that you do.
Excellent.
No,
Excellent.
no yes or no answer there. Okay. We still haven't reached that magic yes or no yet. Okay, go ahead.
The dosage that you recommend for when you were talking about the Boswellia curcumin preparation for colitis and irritable bowel, what dosage do you recommend for that?
Get the BosCure product and take one twice a day.
So twice daily, not at the same time. Take it separated.
You can do it either way. I would probably separate it out for the colitis, but Cheryl, you may know better than I do. What's your thoughts with that one?
I think for most people twice daily is just fine.
Yep.
Unless they sometimes in rare instances when people are extremely large, like over 350 pounds, sometimes the dosage needs to go up just because they are a very large person. But for the vast majority of individuals, that seems like a very reasonable dose to me.
Okay, got a second opinion. There we go.
Right.
Cheryl, by the way, is very wise and knowledgeable, and she teaches me as much as I teach her. So thank you. Yeah.
You're very kind. When you read a label and you see 12 grams of sugar per serving, what is the calculation related to teaspoons? Does 1 gram of sugar equal 1 teaspoon?
No, divide the grams of sugar by 4, and that's how many teaspoons of sugar. But you have to look at by serving. So sometimes they play the trick that you have this little thing that looks like 1 serving, and they say, no, this is 4 servings. So see how many, look at the serving size, and then divide grams of sugar by 4, and that tells you how many spoons of sugar in a serving. And then your own intuition can guide you from there. You know, you don't need to count grams of sugar for the day. It's just like, there's 15 spoons of sugar in this thing? No way. You stick it back on the shelf. So that's the best calculation out there. Thank you. Whoever asked that.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Check the serving size because my son came home with a natural, quote in quotes, naturally sweetened iced tea that he thought was very healthy, and he said it's only 60 calories, in this product. And I said, great. And then we looked at it, and the bottle, which was obviously a single serving size bottle, supposedly had 2.5 servings in it. So instead of 60 calories, it was 150 calories in that one bottle of, quote, natural iced tea. So you do have to be very careful about that.
Which is almost 10 spoons of sugar. Yep.
Yeah. Can a person take, go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, next question. Can a person take Curamin if they are on prescription medicines for cholesterol and blood pressure?
Absolutely. Everything we talked about today can be taken with most medications out there. The one exception issue would be if people are on the blood thinner Coumadin. I'll use everything we talked about in my patients on Coumadin, but they have to have the bleeding time checked after. So if you're on the blood thinner Coumadin, everything has to be okayed by your doctor, or you may just need to see a holistic doctor who can tell you if they're okay and check after. But otherwise, these things are compatible with virtually most of the common things that people are going to be taking. The things that aren't, I don't talk about. And this kind of stuff. So.
Here's an interesting question. If you have to take an OTC, what is the best, and I don't know if they mean best as in safest or best as in most effective to use? Naproxen, ibuprofen, aspirin, acetaminophen.
Well, it depends what you're using it for. Generally, I think that taking the Tylenol or acetaminophen for here and there use is the safest. But once you're using it chronically, you're going to deplete glutathione, and it can cause liver inflammation and other issues. If you're treating an inflammatory problem, like arthritis, for the over-the-counter, the naproxen, because that's the one least likely to cause a heart attack. It'll cause a stomach bleed. But unlike Motrin, which can double or triple heart attack and stroke risk, which is massive, the naproxen is less likely to do that. So the Tylenol first for intermittent use, then the naproxen for ongoing. But except for pain around people's periods, cramps, where the naproxen and Motrin, one of those two work best, I generally recommend, if being used with any regularity, that people stay away from those other medications and just go with the natural.
Here's an excellent question, because I've heard this question many times in the past. There's a lot of confusion on this topic. I take turmeric, maybe not taking the right amount. Is it different than the curcumin you're talking about?
Yeah, unless you live in India and you're cooking breakfast, lunch, and dinner with the turmeric, you're not going to get enough to get the clinical effects that we're looking for here. Now, if you are Indian and you're eating curry for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we don't need to take the other ones. But otherwise, the amount of turmeric you need to take to get the amount of curcumin, and then to get that amount of curcumin to get the absorption of the amount. And that's what frustrated me for almost 30 years. I mean, I read tens of thousands of studies, probably hundreds of thousands that come by. And we'd see over 1,000 studies on turmeric and just how helpful it was for Alzheimer's prevention, inflammation, pain, cancer. But there is no way to get enough into the person without making them sick, unless they were eating Indian food all day, so I kind of ignored them. And then the BCM95 came out, and now you have a technology where you get almost 7-fold absorption. So if you're taking one of like the Curamed, which is a BCM95, Cheryl, how many teaspoons of regular turmeric do you think somebody would have to take, or how much would they have to take to get the equivalent?
Well, it'd be massive, because in turmeric, only 2 to 5% of turmeric is actually curcumin. So if you had a low occurring natural curcumin in that turmeric, then to get the equivalent of 500 milligrams of curcumin, you would have to take, 250?
3 pounds.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, so 3 pounds. So if you want to eat 3 pounds of the turmeric, or you can take one of the pills. For my patients, I tell them, enjoy your Indian food, but take one of the, for cancer, I'm going to go with the Curamed. For Alzheimer's, I'm going to go with the Curamed. For asthma and colitis, I'm going to go with the Bospure. For pain, I'm going to go with the Curamin, or at bedtime, the Curamin PM. And it's really straightforward. If I'm using a curcumin product, those are the ones I'm going to use. And then for arthritis, there's healthy knees and joints.
Excellent. I think in this way myself that turmeric is an amazing and healthy, tasty spice. But if you want the medicine, you need the curcumin.
Yeah.
Is synthetic thyroid a problem? I took it at first. I at first took the bioidentical, and I'm now taking the synthetic because it was not sustained release, and my doctor felt my body would do better with it. Any thoughts? Thank you.
Yep. All of the thyroids are bioidentical. They all are the same hormone that the body has, but they're not all complete. So the Synthroid, it's the same T4 bioidentical hormone that you'll find in the Armour and the glandulars, but it does not have the T3 in it, and that's what the issue is. The benefit of the T4 is that it's a storage form and it gives you the same blood level no matter what time of day you take it. Its half-life is 25 hours, which means no matter what time of day, whenever you take it, you're going to get the same blood level sustained. Where the T3, which is the active hormone and what you find in the armor and other glandulars, it only stays in your blood for about 5 hours and then it's gone. So you get peaks and values. But the problem is that the T3 is what's active. The T4 is not. So what it boils down to is everybody is different. And it depends how it works for you. It's like trying on shoes. It's as if you had 4 pairs of shoes and you said, which pair of shoes should everybody wear? And we say, no, you try them on and see which one fits. So for some people, the glandular combinations will work the best. For others, the Synthroid will work best. For others, it's pure T4, T3, and others, a very high dose T3. And I know I'm speaking in tongue over here. My book, From Fatigue, is fantastic, and the Beat Sugar Addiction Now book goes into each of these things. So what I'm going to tell you is that see which ones work best for you. It's reasonable for your doctor to try the different ones, adjust the dosing, and whichever one works best for you while keeping the free T4 blood test in the normal range for safety. You don't adjust the treatment based on the test. You adjust the treatment to what feels best to you. And when you find the dose that feels best, then you check the free T4 blood level for safety to make sure that it's not too high or too low. And that's how it's done.
I had heard that the reason that some people do better on the naturals with the both T3 and T4 is because you have to convert the T4 into T3 to use it, and like everything, people differ greatly in their ability to do that conversion process. Is that true?
Exactly so, because the T4 storage form is not usable, it's a storage, and it has to be converted to T3, which takes a number of things, including selenium and the functioning metabolic system. So many people cannot, especially with CFS and fibromyalgia, many people are not able to convert the T4 to T3, and therefore the Synthroid not just does it not help, but it actually makes the problem worse. Where with other people, their conversion mechanism is just fine. They just don't make enough T4, and then the T4 works brilliantly. So it's a very personal thing, and I mean, we'll get clues in the symptoms and the tests and the stuff will give us an idea, but mostly it's just a matter of trying on the shoes and see what fits, because it's not one size fits all.
Excellent. Here, let's see. When you talked about pro-coated probiotics, why do you recommend them versus other types of probiotics?
Well, you think about it, that the purpose of stomach acid, in addition to digesting your food, is to act basically as your border guard and to kill anything that tries to get into your body. It's your front line of defense. It's a bath of hydrochloric acid is what it is. And that's why most of the stuff, you don't have stomach acid when you're born, and you colonize your gut with the milk bacteria from breastfeeding. And so those bacteria get in, and then your body starts to make stomach acid when you wean. And now it's supposed to keep those healthy bacteria from the mother's milk colonized there for the rest of your life as being, you know, the right healthy bacteria. And instead what happens is we go ahead, kill off all those bacteria routinely with antibiotics over and over, throw in sugar to grow all kinds of unhealthy stuff, and then take acid blockers to turn off the stomach acid so any darn thing in the environment can get in and wonder why our digestion is miserable, and so are we sometimes. So if you have stomach acid, it will kill over 99% of whatever you put in your mouth. So if you take a probiotic, and this research looks at this, 99.9% of those probiotics are dead after going through a hydrochloric acid bath. And I'm betting that one survivor is not in a shape to put up much of a fight. Now, picture instead, you take it into pearls, and you've got 5 billion healthy bacteria troops in that pearl. That pearl is like a tank. It will not dissolve in stomach acid. So it goes into the stomach. The 5 billion soldiers are sitting there. They've got their food. They're hanging out. You can drop those pearls in a bucket of hydrochloric acid. They just sit there. They're inert. They get past the stomach into an alkaline environment. Alkaline will go ahead and dissolve the pearl tank. And now you're releasing 5 billion healthy troops, where otherwise you would need a same effect. You need 1,000 times 5 billion. You need 5 trillion probiotic bacteria to get the same effect as one pearl.
Okay, excellent. Here's a question. My doctor follows your treatments. He has had me on temazepam for over a year. Is this safe?
Well, it's Valium. Basically, it's a Valium family of medication. So sometimes it's needed. I will tend to use other medications when I can. But if it's needed, it's needed, and then I'll wean people off it over time once I no longer need it.
Here's another
but beyond
question
that, I would say your doctor has very good taste if he follows my
Excellent. Here's an excellent question because I bet you a lot of the folks in our listening audience are thinking this. This person needs a fibro physician, and they happen to be in the Salt Lake City area, but people could be anywhere in America. How do you find a good fibromyalgia physician? Because as we know, expertise varies rather dramatically.
It is. If you go to your standard doctor, figure they will look at you and go, fibromyalgia? What's that? Oh, I don't know. You're crazy. So it's you see that kind of a thing. So going to standard doctor is not likely to be very satisfying. On the other hand, if you go to a holistic doctor, there's at least a fair chance that they'll have some idea with it. And holisticboard.org has about 1,500 board-certified holistic physicians, so at least you have a fighting chance. The fibromyalgia and fatigue center doctors, these are all well-trained. I know Salt Lake City, Bill Whitaker used to be there. He was very good. I'm not sure if he still has the practice there, but worth looking him up if he does. And then beyond that, I treat people from all over the world. I do it by phone with a phone consultation. Our new patient visits are 4 hours of my one-on-one time. So it's a very thorough evaluation. And then as long as you have a family doctor that's doing your yearly checkups and things, they don't need to treat the fibro. I just need to make sure they're checking that you don't have something else. Then we can go ahead and treat you by phone and follow you up by phone and do the treatments in that way. And for that, on my website at vitality101.com, it'll talk about how to make an appointment with me for those that would like that.
Excellent. Here's a question from someone who says, if I wean myself off the Cymbalta and the curcumin doesn't do the trick, will I have a relapse with my pain? My doctor told me that if I tried to stop or lower my dose on Cymbalta, that the fibromyalgia may come back even worse.
Let me grumble a little more for you over there. Anytime
it
you stop any medication,
yeah,
the body may have a rebound effect, but that doesn't mean that you can never stop any medication. Otherwise, you'll end up, dying. You'll end up coming to be 65-year-old and you can't get off anything, and you have 18 medications. Now they say you have Alzheimer's because you're confusing junk from all the medicines. So what I would tend to do is to use these other things and use the SHINE protocol and do that to go ahead and get rid of the underlying cause of the pain. And then once you've gotten rid of the underlying cause, then you may find that you no longer need the Cymbalta and can wean it off. I will give a caution. Most medications, you can just break them in half to lower the dose, but Cymbalta, the pill, cannot be broken. It's not safe to try to break it and take it. Because of its time-release mechanism. So what I would do is do the other things you're doing to go ahead and get rid of the underlying cause of the fibro pain. Tell your doctor you'd like to wean off the medication and ask them to wean you. And if they say you have to be on the medication, you will die, otherwise find another doctor.
And I also want to point out that I'm not aware of anything in the SHINE protocol that cannot also be used while you're on the Cymbalta. It's not not necessarily an either-or proposition.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we have a few other questions that are more specific with symptoms or physical issues, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that because we're almost out of time, we will answer those offline and make sure we get email answers to all of you. Would that be all right with you, Dr. Teitelbaum?
Sounds good. And let me let people know that we have my Facebook page where I take questions and answers day in and day out. It's www.facebook.com/Dr. Teitelbaum, TEITELBAUM. And as the people, as our family on Facebook knows, we have about 4,000 folks that are regularly putting in questions, and I can't answer all of them, but I answer a whole bunch of them.
Okay, all right, I'm going to contradict myself. One more question came in, and I'm a sucker for kids, so I'm going to ask this one quickly. Can a child use the BosCure formula, a 10-year-old child, if they're having the irritable bowel issues?
At 10 years old, I would do the one a day.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm not a pediatrician, so I don't want to presume on that. But 10 years old is getting pretty close to being adults, and so one a day I think should be fine.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Teitelbaum. I really appreciate it. Thank you for staying after to answer all of these questions. I found the question and answer session as informative as the presentation.
Oh, it's all fun. It's all fun. And guys, thank you for hosting, and to Jennifer in the background for making it all work, and thank all of you for coming. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to announce some upcoming webinars. On March 6th, I will be doing a presentation on depression and natural interventions for depression. And on March 27th, Dr. Lise Alschuler, a very well-known integrative cancer practitioner and expert, as well as author, will be doing a presentation on stress and cancer. And if you have not heard Dr. Lise Alschuler speak, you are in for a real treat. If I had a question about cancer, this is the person to whom I would turn. She really has paid a lot of attention to all of the research that goes on in integrative medical treatments for cancer. So I hope you'll be able to join us at those webinars. For more information, you can sign up for a free weekly newsletter from Terry Talks Nutrition. On that site, you can also listen to recordings of past seminars. That's your gateway through which you can come into the recordings of the past seminars and webinars. I want you to know that we treat your email address with great respect, and we do not share it, and you will not be bombarded with information should you honor us with your email address. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Terry Talks Nutrition. You can also follow Terry Lemeron for your daily dose of medical information and inspiration on twitter.com/Terry Lemeron. Thank you so much for your kind attendance at today's educational webinar. And until we meet again, good health to you.